I mentioned at the start of the show, I want to talk about how far are we allowed to fight back, or are we even allowed to fight back? I just want to tell you some of the few ways that some people are engaging in fighting back, some of the ideas we have and how we're fighting back against what we're watching in America's cities. Let me start with Portland. Portland, which has been the scene of the worst violence, and Antifa and Black Lives Matter on the streets, destroying property, burning buildings, trying to trap police officers and other people inside official government buildings. This has been going on in Portland for over 100 days. Over the weekend in Portland, there was an ongoing, massive, violent mob engaging in violence against the city. And in Portland, what those Antifa rioters did that time, they were going down a city street, smashing door windows, smashing car windows. They actually forced a truck driver to stop, they demanded that he give the Black Lives Matter, power salute, and do that and yell Black Lives Matter, and he did it, and they still broke all the windows in his truck. They continue going down the street in Portland, smashing windows of businesses, stealing things. I mean, just at one point I want to make about this, and the segment is, are we allowed to fight back? But even before how we fight back, just stop and think. Our whole sense of justice, our whole sense of law and order, our whole sense of living in civil society has been dumbed down since May of this year. Dumbed down. Week after week, we read stories about violence, stories about property destruction, and the expectation we have as American citizens changes. We say, well, we really can't do anything about it because they're really mad about something, or we don't dare do anything because, they might do something worse if we stand up for ourselves. And after all, this is Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and everyone knows they're lawless criminals, lawless thugs, and everyone's afraid to stand up to them. And the mayors in these cities won't do anything about it. The governors will barely do anything. We're watching our cities crumble. But I want to hit that one point first to make very clear. We cannot agree that this is the new America. This is the new norm. The new norm in America is not going to be that every time Antifa, Black Lives Matter, any radical group, or any other group, if this were conduct engaged in by white supremacists, by whoever other group, whatever group it is, we all have to be on the same page. We have law and order. For the same reason, we wouldn't let white supremacists or any other crazy group engage in this conduct. We do not allow Black Lives Matter or Antifa to do this, but they do. So in Portland over the weekend, this mob ended up breaking the windows and storming inside both the Chipotle, the restaurant Chipotle, and a Starbucks. Inside the Starbucks, they were breaking things, stealing things, taking whatever they wanted, and went out. And so they did this in Portland, and a lot of this was recorded by this one particular really aggressive guy who's been reporting out there for a long time, Andy NGO. I think it's just Andy No, but he's taking pictures, videos. They actually, these mobsters, these criminals in Portland this time, they happened upon a flag, one of the flags we have for Blue Lives Matter. It's an American flag with a blue stripe in it to show you're standing up for police. And they burned it in the street. And this was recorded. You can go watch if you really want to on Twitter. On the street, chanting, "Blue Lives Splatter." That's advocating for blood and violence against police. So they engaged in all this conduct. Police, no arrests, no arrests. These people tearing down a city street or several blocks of a street in America, breaking windows, stealing, robbing, declaring they have taken over Starbucks, held a street dance in front of the Central Precinct to point out, because there are no cops, no police doing anything. No police doing anything. And the statement put out by the police, there was no violence for the crowd, therefore no force or munitions were used. I guess since the crowd wasn't killing people, it was okay with the police. They end up saying no arrests were made, but the vandalism is under investigation. They have destroyed property, destroyed people's businesses, no arrests. Hey, we're looking into the vandalism. Who knows? Maybe we'll arrest somebody for breaking a window. We have so dumbed down our country that we're not even allowed, my question for this segment, How are we allowed to fight back? Are we? The police can't even fight back. The police are not fighting back. They're just letting it all happen. Letting it all happen as though this is the norm. This is what we put up with in this country. So we have the president, fortunately, deciding, in fact, he put out, President Trump asked the Department of Justice to identify cities in America that are failing to protect their citizens. You know, people, if you had predicted this a year ago in this country, that you would have the president having to ask the DOJ to look into which city governments, which state governments were not even protecting their own citizens, you think that's loony. That's not going to happen. We have been so dumbed down in our expectations of normal law and order, normal life, that the president actually had to ask the DOJ, you know, well, where is it? Where can we officially say that we don't have any protection being given to the citizens because you have the Democrat mayors in city councils and Democrat leaders around this country letting this reign of terror continue. So the DOJ did a little study, looked into it, and identified 3 cities. Not surprisingly, New York City, Portland, and Seattle. All 3 identified simply cannot have are not, I don't know if they can't enforce law and order, but they won't. And Attorney General Barr had a great quote: when state and local leaders impede their own law enforcement officers and agencies from doing their jobs, it endangers innocent citizens who deserve to be protected, including those who are trying to peaceably assemble and protest. You might actually have peaceable protesters, even those who want to protest in favor of Black Lives Matter and about the George Floyd incident, but they can't do it either. They're also threatened. They are also in danger by this mob. And by the way, I'm going to tell you, back to Portland for a second, I want to tell you, there was a tweet out by their impossibly useless mayor, Ted Wheeler, had a tweet out where he was bragging, saying, hey, you know, it was really good. We didn't have the police did not have to use tear gas. He says in a tweet, I'm so happy to announce that the police followed my order and did not use tear gas to settle down these mobs. He's bragging that the police followed his order not to break up these mobs, not to use tear gas. So back to the Department of Justice. Trump asked them to look into this. Department says, okay, we've investigated. Here's what we have. Attorney General Barr is pointing out, you know, you really have to be, you have to, as a country, to be a country, you have to protect your citizens. We cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted when the safety of the citizenry hangs in the balance. It is my hope that the cities identified by the Department of Justice today will reverse course and become serious. And actually, here is Mayor Ted Wheeler's. I'm confirming today that Portland police abided by my order, banning the use of tear gas for crowd control during a protest. He calls it a protest. It's not a protest, Mayor Wheeler, when they are breaking windows. It's criminal. Arrest them. They are destroying property. You don't have to wait till they kill someone. Arrest them for the little things. They stop doing them. So anyway, this Portland mayor has repeatedly called for the violence to end, but his chicken-hearted response when the violence came near his house was to say, okay, let me move to a different house. He actually moved. He decided that rather than say, you know what, we're going to have this mob in front of businesses and homes, including his own, and we're going to call out the police and we're going to push them away. We're going to tell them you can't be here and arrest them if it takes arresting 1,000 people. Just do it. It is the only answer. And he won't do it. His answer, chicken-hearted, was to move away. Okay, let me get out of their way. They really want to destroy my house. Let them go ahead. People, we have so dumbed down the normal expectations of civilized society, we cannot figure out whether in Portland the mayor ought to have all these people arrested and sit them in jail for a while. Get rid of these policies that let the district attorney or the courts listen to have someone come in, plead not guilty. They didn't kill anybody, so no bail for you. Bail is racist. You go get out of here. No bail for you. And it goes on and on. I'm telling you, people, America's watching what's happening in these cities, and all this is helping Trump's reelection. But I want to hit one more point about how we can respond as a people, and I actually found this very entertaining. I have a good friend who is a PhD economist and a great writer. He writes really profound, substantive things about the beauty of freedom and capitalism and about socialism being so disastrous and how socialism has caused more misery in human history. He's just a brilliant writer. He happened to send me something I wanted to share with you, and this is actually something I had not heard about this at the time, but the Israeli Defense Forces developed something they are calling a stink bomb. Stink bomb. The Israeli Defense Forces have developed this thing that is extremely odoriferous. It smells like a combination of sewage, skunk, and decaying bodies. It smells horrible. It's a horrible smell, and the Israeli Defense Forces have used it when the Palestinians are engaged in violent mob violence. They have used it, and they just shoot it out of a cannon. It's not like the rubber bullet, someone might say hurt them. It's not like the other things where someone might say, oh, man, rubber bullet, I got hurt. This is it just smells horrible. And the additional thing is, it sends them running because it's so horrible, but it sticks to their skin. They smell bad for a long time. It can make people feel nauseous and perhaps end up, vomiting because it's so horrible smelling. But otherwise doesn't hurt them. And it goes away eventually. It is a great idea, and it turned out in this article that my friend sent me that there actually has been a sale by the Israeli Defense Forces of this stink bomb to some police departments in America. And if you can't defund, because of course the left is complaining, you can't defund Portland, Seattle, and New York just because they don't protect their citizens. You can't defund them. You can't send federal troops in. You can't arrest these people. Basically, the Democrats are saying there's nothing you can do to them. You just have to let them do this and no consequence at all. I'm in favor of the stink bomb. I vote for one here. Do something effective and something that will have a lasting impact and will cause them to recognize that this is not going to be put up, America is not going to continue to put up with this. I'm going to close out this segment by asking Matt the Wonderful to play a clip. So Katie Hopkins is in her tour of America. I've mentioned that to you over the last she's been here, I think, a week and a half. She's doing a tour of America, going all around the country. She managed to get to the site in Minneapolis where George Floyd died. And it's interesting because the city has blocked off the whole area. It's like a ghost town. Nobody's there. But she managed to get in. She did. I couldn't grab the whole clip, but I got a portion of it from Matt the Wonderful to play for Katie's observations about what's going on in the area in Minneapolis where George Floyd died.
So I'm here at the George Floyd Memorial, the site of where George Floyd died. Behind me is the cut food stores where everything happened, and these streets are now all blocked off. One of the things that really strikes you when you're here is that the demands aren't clear. In fact, I'd say this and I'd level it to every single protester, Black Lives Matter protesters, to every football star taking a knee or raising a fist. And I'd say to you all, with all your street blockades and your flowers and your barriers and your slogans and your graffiti and your burnt out stores and your nonsense.
I guess she said to them, I'm sorry, I obviously sent Matt the wrong cutoff. She said, you've got to say what you want. What is it you're demanding? You're destroying everything. What is it you want? I'm sorry, I guess I didn't send Matt the second clip, but it was interesting to see that area in Minneapolis. It's just, the whole city looks like a war zone. As I mentioned to you many times, I have many relatives in Minnesota. I periodically hear from them. No one would go downtown ever. I think about downtown Minneapolis, as I mentioned, if you listen to the show all the time, my dad grew up in Minnetonka, and growing up, we used to go out to Minnesota every summer. My mom and dad and their 3 kids, that was our summer vacation. We went to Minnesota, visited cousins, and Iowa, the whole area. And that was one of the special treats my grandmother, my father's mother, used to take the girls, my mother, my sister, and myself, out to lunch at Dayton's department store. We brought one nice outfit in summer vacation. and she took us out to lunch at Dayton's department store. We had a lovely, time out in a lovely little, it was a nice, kind of upscale little restaurant they had in Dayton's department store. I remember downtown Minneapolis saying it was the coolest thing. And that whole, the entire area of downtown Minneapolis is a mess. It looks like a war zone, and people are flooding and fleeing to the suburbs. And it's just a horrible, horrible commentary on one political party in this country that simply cannot stand up and say, we're not going to run our country this way. We're not going to have a country that everyone who's law-abiding is afraid to go out at night, everyone law-abiding afraid to live in the big cities. There needs to be, I think there will be a massive rebuke of the Democrat Party in the fall election cycle, a massive rebuke, because all of this is something, at the very least, they are tolerating. And more importantly than that, the radical left leaders of America today, the Marxist, socialist, communist, the whole radical left cabal that used to be seen as an extremist, leftist kind of out there, they run the Democrat Party. They control the Democrat Party. They are the Democrat Party. And they cannot say anything about this property destruction because it's being done by people whose votes they need.